Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about rice again, but this time we're talking about using a rice cooker and how much benefit it gives you. On top of that, we're going to be making something to go with our rice because nobody likes just plain white rice. Stick around, let's get this done. Alright, so I have talked about rice in the pan before, but what I haven't talked about is probably the most essential cooking gadget you should have in your kitchen, and that is a rice cooker. These things make your life so much easier, and I definitely recommend getting one. You don't even have to get one as nice as this, but get one. This one is kind of nice because not only does it do white rice, but it also has a brown rice and a keep warm function on here. So it's something that we use quite often in our house. We're going to start this by taking out your bowl. And I'm just going to dump, this is half a cup of unwashed white rice straight in there. Make sure you get all of it out. That's why I like these bendy ones, because you can make sure you get everything out of there. Alright, and then we're just going to take this to the sink and wash that real quick. Alright, now that your white rice is washed, you should have a pretty sticky looking mess in there. But you're washing the rice so that later it's not sticky and you have individual grains when you go to eat your rice later. Now into that rice cooker, I go ahead and turn my power on, and you're going to want to add twice as much water as you have rice, or you can use the finger stick method. But when working with such small amounts, I tend to go with the liquid measuring. Alright, so I just close that lid and press the magic white rice button, and I don't have to worry about that. That's going to do its own thing. Alright, so nobody likes just white rice on its own. So what we're going to do is we're going to make something to go with it out of this super thin, cheap steak. Some onions, a little bit of ginger, and some garlic. We'll add a few other seasonings here and there. But this you might as well prep while you're doing your rice, because it is going to taste better if it sits in the fridge all together for 30 minutes to 2 hours. Don't forget your handy dandy trash bowl. This helps make sure that your kitchen stays clean as you work. And a clean kitchen makes work just that much easier. I'm taking more off of this onion than I wanted to, but sometimes that's what it takes. So you're going to take this onion, and this onion is actually fairly small. So instead of making 3 incisions, I'm just going to make one almost all the way down to the bulb, and then across. Now, depending on your what you're putting your meat in, you might need more onions than what you have. But the goal here is you want this steak covered in onions, top to bottom. Take your bench scraper. This thing is like $3 or $4. I highly recommend getting one. They're so useful. I just take those onions, don't put anything on them, just throw them down in the bottom of your vessel. Make sure they're all broken up and separated. Alright, these aren't even the best cut, but we're going to cook them way down later, so it's not going to be an issue. Alright, we're just going to repeat that with the other half of this onion. Remember, just as far back as you can without actually cutting the bulb. Your waste goes into your waste container. Alright, take the rest of this onion and we're just going to drop that into the bottom of this. Alright, so I went ahead and cut up the other half of my other onion. And I'm just going to take this super thin, nothing to it piece of steak. I'm going to lay it right on top of those bottom layer of onions. And we're going to take these onions and just cover that steak up as much as possible. Like I said, you may need more onions. I'm pretty sure I have plenty in here. And then I'm just going to cover this with some plastic wrap and put that straight into the fridge. Alternatively, if you have a lid for your container, you can use a lid. I just find that in a situation like this, plastic wrap is going to give me a much tighter, more precise seal. Now, while all that's going on, go ahead and clean up your station, and we will be back to this in a little while. Alright, so at this point, it's been a little over an hour. We are going to go ahead and start our burner. And you want it to start at about a medium heat. We're going to let that get warm for a couple of minutes. Alright. Go ahead and remove your top off of this. And you're going to want to pull your steak straight out of those onions. Now, we are not going to cook this yet. This we are just going to sit aside. We're going to try to pull off most of the onions. And you'll see your onions are a little bit discolored, but that's not going to be a big problem. This pan should only take a minute or two to heat up. And when it's getting warm, take some butter, drop it in there. But with the butter, I'm also going to give it just a little bit of olive oil. I'm quite the fan of olive oil. And we're going to go ahead and mix those two together. And let that foam up. It's going to foam for a little bit. You want the butter to completely melt and the foam to die away. But you don't want the butter to really brown at this point. That's part of why you add the olive oil, to help with the temperature management. But two, it just gives a nice flavor to it. Alright, so that's a lot of butter in there, which is exactly what we want at this point. Because all of this is going to go into making us a nice sauce. Alright, give that a minute to let the foam die down. I'm actually going to turn the heat down a little bit. Down to a medium-low, not low-low. And we're going to just drop our onions straight into this pan. Okay. Put that to the side for now. Oh, I got a piece of onion skin in there. And we're just going to give that a stir for a minute. Let the butter coat all of that. And then a little bit of salt. Alright, so you give this just a little bit of salt. Not much, because you're about to add something that's really salty to this here in just a minute. So take about 3/4 cup of water. I'm just using cold water because it's going to go into this here in just a second. And maybe half a tablespoon of beef bouillon. Alright. Now when I buy my bouillon, I buy it in this powdered form instead of the cubed form because I don't always need a whole cube when you're working in small quantities. But you'll want to take a fork. And mix that together really well. And you see, you want these onions to cook, but not really brown at this point. Alright. So my onions are starting to soften and turn just a little bit translucent. And I want to press those out so that as much onion is touching the surface of the pan as possible. Because you want those onions to cook down. And we're going to go ahead and just add a little bit. You're probably not going to want to do all of it at first. Of that beef bouillon mixture into these. And then I'm going to turn it up just a hair because I want to bring that up to a simmer. While that's going, I'm going to pull out a clove of garlic. I got lucky and our grocery store finally had actual garlic in it and not just the pre-packaged stuff. And to make cutting garlic, or to make, well, taking the skin off garlic easier, I tend to cut the end off and it just peels away nice and easy. Well, typically a lot easier than this. There you go. See? And you're going to want to mince this. As much as possible. So to start out, you're going to want to cut your garlic into little rounds like this. And then I just tend to line them all up and mince. And you're aiming for as fine a mince as you can get here. Okay? Because you are going to want this garlic to combine with your onions. Alright. Take this handy dandy bench scraper again. And just like that, your garlic has been transferred into your onions. Now at this point, you can turn this down. And you want to reduce this until pretty much all of the liquid is gone from this pan at this point. Just stirring occasionally to make sure all of the onions are in that beef liquid. While that's going, take yourself a piece of ginger. Some people say to use a spoon. And I have found that the back of a fork, the butt end of a fork works just as well as a spoon does for peeling your ginger. Now, with ginger, you're not going to need a whole lot of it, okay? I am literally taking this little piece because I'm just serving myself and mincing this up as much as I can. I'm even going to smush it down and try to give it as much help as I can. Okay, and this ginger is going to add a nice sharpness to this dish. I don't really have a name for this dish. I just call it rice with meat and onions, but take that garlic, or that ginger, and move it right in there with the onions and garlic. Give it a stir so it all incorporates in. And see, that's already starting to thicken up quite a bit. Alright, we're just going to let that cook down for a little while. Alright, so you guys can see that the onions have cooked out most of that liquid in there. And those onions are really soft. There. When that happens, I'm just going to push these onions off to the side. Just like this. And this way I'm using the same skillet to cook essentially 3 things. This steak only needs a little bit of pepper. And you may be thinking, oh, why isn't he going to put salt on that steak? Well, that's because I'm going to put soy sauce on it later. Alright? But that steak is only going to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to take, for a little bit of color, just a couple of rounds of zucchini. I'm going to cut them half moons. And these we're just going to place in the skillet for a minute or two. With a little bit more olive oil on top of them. And they'll be our garnish later. They don't take very long. You still want them to have some bite to them. You don't want them to be super soft, but you do want them cooked. And if you want to, you can actually fold your onions back and tilt down a little bit and get some of that butter in there with them. And after 20 to 30 seconds, you can go ahead and flip them over. They're cooking, but they're not. But remember, our goal is not to get them super soft, because they are going to provide color and texture at the end of this. Go ahead and grab yourself a paper towel. Scoop those out. See, those only took a couple of seconds to cook. You cut them super thin. If you like them a little bit thicker, you can cut them thicker and then make them go a little bit longer. Alright, so once your zucchini is out of the pan, go ahead and put your steak in there. This is super thin, so it does not take very long. I do not like my steaks well done. So, I go ahead and take that steak in there. Now, take your rice out of your rice cooker. Take your same spatula you've been using. And just fluff that rice up a little bit. You want it nice and pretty. Alright. And you're using something like a spatula like this to separate this rice so that you're not going to smush it any, because when I pick this up, you'll see there are a bunch of individual little grains in there. Anyways, once you have your rice fluffed, I just go ahead and take it and dump it straight into this bowl. And as you'll see, the rice I cooked was just the right amount for one bowl. Now I'm going to take this meat out and set it down for just a minute. It doesn't need to sit for very long. It's a super thin steak. It's already cooked all the way through, but you do want the juices in it to have a minute to sit. So take your onions, and I'm going to just drizzle them over the top. You want that butter, all of it, straight into this pan. And just lay it flat. Alright. Waste not, want not. Alright, take a couple of your zucchini and lay them, if I can get a hold of them right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Take your little steak. I use a fork because it's still pretty warm. Just cut it up into little bites. And you know what? I am going to use... I'm going to take a bite of that because it's good. And see, another thing, this bench scraper helps with plating. And there you have it. This is my steak and rice bowl. Alright, thanks you guys for watching as I work with some cheaper ingredients once again. Remember, the goal of this is just to use what you already have and what you can afford. It's not about who can get the best steaks or what have you. You can be a successful cook with even the cheapest of ingredients. And that's kind of what I want to celebrate here. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Leave some suggestions down in the comments below of other things you would like to see done on this channel.